Coming up on Paddle the Springs podcast, what every driver needs to know about cycling in the Springs, and cyclists too. Welcome and roll on into Paddle the Springs podcast, where we banter about all things biking in Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region. I'm your host, Tori Giffen, self-appointed ambassador for cycling in the Springs, and what I don't know about biking in this area, my friends do. And here are today's guests. Mr. Bicycle himself is here, Mr. Alan Beauchamp with Trails and Open Space Coalition, and my first bike ride leader in Colorado Springs, like almost 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, it was a few moons ago.
Welcome, Alan. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
We also have Officer Santos here with the Colorado Springs Police Department. He's a big-time biker too, but he knows both sides of the story. Welcome, Officer Santos, Sid Santos. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And Joan staying with Pedestrian and Cycle Manitou Springs, or Pac-Man as it's affectionately known. And Joan is here because they've been working in Manitou to make it a more bikeable, friendly city. And you've been part of that task force for some time now. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Tori.
So we're going to dive right in today. One of the things I wanted to talk about is why cycling is so important to a community. Colorado Springs is a top bicycle-friendly destination. It's ranked silver as far as bicycle-friendly cities in the United States, and all of our efforts are going to make it a more bikeable and friendly city. Why is that important? Anybody want to start?
I think I'd like to jump in if you don't mind, Tori, Alan, and Sid. I feel like we live in such a gorgeous area. Look, we're at the foothills of the gorgeous Pikes Peak Mountain. We want to be able to get outside, right, and enjoy our outdoor activities and what have you. So to me, that's a big motivator.
And then really, from the other side, it's important to be a bike-friendly city for commuters and just environmental reasons, yes?
Oh, absolutely. We have over 300 days of sunshine a year, and most people that move here for the unparalleled outdoor access, and that means bicycling, both in recreational forms and also for commuters and people that want to not have to drive in their neighborhood to go to the local store and things of this nature. So we want people to be able to choose a bicycle on a daily basis and to be able to do that safely.
So it might not be any surprise that as the owner of the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort, it's very important and key to my business that we're a big bicycle-friendly city. I mean, we have hundreds of miles of biking trail here. We're working more to even make the connections between all the bike trails. I mean, it's a mecca for mountain bikers, for gravel riders. But one of the reasons why I started the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort was because I found out that bicycle tourism is huge. Like, bicycle tourists will come and stay longer in a region, and they will spend more money than most of your average tourists. Like, bicycle tourism is a huge boost to our economy.
Absolutely.
And biking is one of the best attractions. We have over 70 tourist attractions in this community, but I think that we all could agree in this room that it's our parks and our trails and our mountains and the outdoor adventure that really bring people to this community and are what makes it so great. So it's good for our economy.
You are absolutely right, Tori. You nailed it.
So, Officer Santos, you are a passionate bicyclist yourself. How long have you been with the CSPD?
I've been with CSPD since 1997. Talking about cycling, along with the police department, I was involved with the neighborhood policing unit a little over 20 years ago for about 6 years. And I spent a lot of time riding around the city, using the bicycle as a tool for law enforcement, but also for community engagement. I did appreciate the fact that being on a bicycle seemed like there was a better connection with people in the community than being inside of an enclosed car, driving from one point to another and not actually getting to talk to anybody. So it's been a pleasure being able to use a bicycle as a amazing tool in law enforcement.
That's incredible. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen that are some of the biggest challenges between pedestrians and cyclists in our community? Why, if it's so great, are there so many issues surrounding it?
Well, and I'll take you to the point where something that's very important to me is the safety of cyclists, safety of drivers, pedestrians. So that is a big thing. And I think that there's a disconnect between people who are drivers but not cyclists, or potentially not active pedestrians, only going from point A to point B, but nothing beyond that, is that there's certain things that cyclists are allowed to do on the roadways or encouraged to do, and people who are driving don't necessarily understand that. And I think that you have some information on the new laws on the stop signs and the red lights. I don't know if you'd like to go into it for cyclists, but I would put this out to people, especially if you're driving, to consider this is what cyclists can do and be aware, so that there's not that frustration and then potential for aggression between people thinking, well, why are you doing this when you're not supposed to be?
Yeah, we experienced that. So I lead a weekly bike ride out of the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort. And since they enacted the Colorado Safety Stop Law, which basically allows for you to come to a stop sign intersection and look, if there's no other traffic there, you may proceed without stopping in that intersection if there's no cars. If there is a light, my understanding is that you must still stop, but you may proceed through the intersection if there is no other cars present at that intersection, but you may not turn left at that intersection. Do I have it right? I hope I have it right.
I don't know. You had it perfect.
Okay.
And cyclists can treat stop signs like yield signs.
Yes.
When it's appropriate. And they can treat street lights, traffic signals, like stop signs, only when it's appropriate and the way is clear.
Right.
I think you could take a left, because you can go through the intersection. And I'm not aware of you can't take a left.
I heard that, but we'll have to check into that.
That's a good one for us to check into. That's a nuance. But what Sid was talking about was, this is the newest law, and it's a fairly significant change for our roadways. And most cyclists don't even know that it was signed into law recently. They hear about it through the grapevine, but there's no formal education. And if there's drivers out there that don't ride a bicycle at all, how would they know? And so all of a sudden they see this new behavior, or more of the same behavior that maybe frustrated them before, and they have a challenge with that. And so it's
I can see it.
so important.
And I do want to throw in, and I don't know if we were phrasing it properly, it's not just the light signal, it's when the light signal is red. So
Yes.
green, you would still be traveling as you would normally. But yes, for the red light, that you treat it like a stop sign, but understanding that you still have to yield the right of way as you would as if you were in a vehicle at a stop sign or a yield sign accordingly.
Yeah.
But that's just one of the examples of new confusion between cyclists and motorists that could create a lot of animosity out there. But Joan, you know a little bit more about this. Tell us more about it.
Absolutely. So we have partners at the state level called Bicycle Colorado. Bike Colorado Springs actually got a hold of their safety stop document, and you can now download this on the Bike Colorado Springs website, and it tells you everything you need to know. In fact, something I would add to that would be you have to
BikeColoradoSprings.com or
.org.
.org.
Yep, .org. Thank you.
Okay.
One thing I might add to that would be you have to be 15 years or older to perform a Colorado safety stop in Colorado. And then also the other nuance is that, hey, you're really not supposed to proceed more than 10 miles an hour once you either treat the stop sign or the red light, as a yield or a complete stop. So just a little nuance
You
to
can't
add to
go blazing through it at 20 miles an hour on
Right.
your bicycle. Got it.
You got it. Yep.
You're still treating it like a yield.
Or a stop, yeah,
Or-
depending on if it's a red light or a stop sign. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
How can we better communicate that? I mean, obviously, we're trying to do that with the podcast here, is give drivers and other cyclists education. But what other ways, besides the news or, a one-time article in the Gazette? I mean, my kids took a driver's test. The new Colorado Safe to Stop law is not on there. How much bicycle law is on the driver's test?
Well, if
Because
I could,
it is a problem, right? I have no idea.
It is a problem. So how about this? I like to put a plug in for what we're doing in Manitou with Pedestrian and Cycle Manitou, but then also the work that we've done with our partners, Bicycle or Bike Colorado Springs, and that is, if you go to that website, you can find out all about free driver's ed courses that talk about what the laws are. It's also a helpful training because it also explains what are the laws for people on bikes. So both user groups can learn something from that. But the most exciting thing about the bicycle-friendly driver training, which obviously started back in the day with Fort Collins, thanks to them sharing it worldwide, is that the League of American Bicyclists, our national level advocacy org, they actually digitized this particular course over 2 years ago. They offer it free online, and you can become a bicycle-friendly certified driver in 30 minutes or less.
That's amazing. What can we throw out? Do we need incentives? I mean, because it can get kind of dangerous out there. I want to get more, drivers and cycling drivers to know about bicycle safety.
So here's one incentive that I may throw out there, and that is if someone were to take the course, print out their certificate of completion, they can actually take that to their insurance company and say, hey, would you give me a small discount because I took this driver's ed course through the League of American Bicyclists? Actually, my husband and I have done that, and we actually got a small discount on our insurance.
That's amazing. I think I would offer you a one time only, a free beer at the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort if you brought me that certificate that you took, the driver, what is it called again?
Bicycle-friendly driver.
Bicycle-friendly driver course. That seems like that's probably one of the most valuable things that you can have because there's really not anywhere else that you can go and learn and test your knowledge, right? If you're not
right
a bicyclist,
now.
Why would you care? Joan, you're one of the most passionate cycling advocates. I know you and your husband even received an award from Bicycle Colorado for advocacy. What exactly was that, and why are you so passionate about advocacy and cycling?
Well, thanks, Tori. Appreciate that compliment. Well, first of all, I'm passionate because, I actually was hit by a distracted driver. That was back in 2014. I was riding a bike to work as transportation, as a way to help the planet, as a way to stay healthy. And unfortunately, on my way home one night from work, I was behind a truck driver. It was a woman. I could see she was on the phone. She was holding the phone with her left hand, and she missignaled. And
you're one of those little mirrors. How did you see?
I actually, I was behind her, but I could see her in front of me and what she was doing. But she missignaled. She signaled that she was going to go left. She started drifting toward the center lane, and then I went to come around her on the right. And unfortunately, she had meant to turn right. And unfortunately, I was right hooked, and it actually happened in front of a police station. It was the Falcon Police Station up north off of Goddard. Anyways, it was horrible. I got thrown to the ground. My head hit the asphalt. Her front right tire was on my front wheel of the bicycle, and I was hurt, but I was lucky. I was able to walk away from that crash, and sadly, things didn't go well in court. I was subpoenaed. She was disputing the ticket, and so I was asked to be in court as a witness to what happened. And while we were there, the district attorney asked the judge before any proceedings began that morning to please dismiss the case because he didn't know what crime the driver had committed. I was livid. I was upset. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And so I didn't want anyone else to go through that again. Of course, it took me about 4 years to finally figure out what my niche was. Thanks to Alan, he heard my story. He encouraged me to hang in there, what have you. But
big award-winning cycling advocate too.
That's right. He connected me with Bicycle Colorado when they reached out to our community to say, "Hey, we have this Vision Zero grant. We want to start saving more lives on our road. We want to help at more of the community levels, statewide, with this bike-friendly driver message that Fort Collins created." And so he connected me with them, and then we organized the very first bicycle-friendly driver class ever in this county back in October 2018. So that's why I'm so passionate. I feel like I have to be the change I want to see in the world, because I can't just stew and be upset and be mad about it. I feel like I have to take action in a positive way. So I really want to help save lives and help someone to not have to go through that frustration that I experience personally. But on that note, I also wanted to mention that we have another awesome driver's ed resource that was rolled out by our partners in Denver, Bicycle Colorado. Another kudos to them. This is a driver's ed course that's called Shift Driving. It takes a little under 2 hours. It is free. Anyone can take it. And you can actually receive a certification for taking the course and answering the questions at the end of the course correctly. So this is another awesome resource that our motorists, I'm a motorist too, I ride a bike, but I also have to know, how do I share the road courteously with other people who are also outside of cars. But anyway, Shift Driving is another awesome free resource that's out there. It takes a little under 2 hours to complete, and it covers all of the laws in Colorado. That's one thing about this course that's a little bit different than the national bike-friendly driver version, and that is they go through the specific laws that pertain to people behind the wheel and people on bikes.
I'm ashamed as a ride group leader that I haven't taken this course yet. I've taken the League of American Cyclists ride leader training, but I haven't taken the driver training. I'm going to pledge and commit to taking this training, and also the one that's put out by Bicycle Colorado, or the national
League of American Bicyclists?
League of American Bicyclists one. I'm going to take the training, and I'm hoping that our listeners out there will pledge to take the training too, because like you said, like all you can do is be the change that you want to see, and it starts with you. So if we could get everybody to take personal responsibility and get educated, and then go out and educate 4 more of your friends, that would be amazing.
Love that.
That would be amazing. Joan, you are just awesome. I thank you for your bicycle advocacy. And I did want to also just mention our other award-winning cycling advocate here. I mean, I called him Mr. Bicycle. But I probably have 2 of the biggest cycling advocates in our city sitting right here, and I feel so honored.
It's incredibly challenging to get the state level training materials from like the DMV. So you're going to take your driver's training course. To get new material into that is you have to jump through many, many hoops. And so that's not something that has reacted as fast as the laws have. But we have a long history with laws changing. Back in 2009, the 3-foot to pass law, which many people have heard about, they don't quite understand it, but that's the one that mandated that you had to give cyclists 3 feet of room to pass so they would be safe. And that was signed into law by Governor Ritter then in Penrose Library in downtown Colorado Springs back in 2009. Wow. And even that one is nuanced because people are driving along, they have to give them 3 feet. And it says in the law that you can pass on a double yellow line if it is safe. And so when you look at the driver's manual, you can't, that you have to treat that as a wall, And so it's a very critical piece that most people aren't even aware of. And so you can do that if you deem it to be safe as a driver because you're providing safety for that bicyclist.
Is Woodman in Colorado Springs one of those examples? When you're coming down Woodman, doesn't it have the double line in the middle? And then it's a very popular route by cyclists, and it's single direction each way with no bike lane, and drivers have to cross that line in order to give 3 feet to pass to the bicyclist and make it safe. Because otherwise, it's terrifying. If they would kill us if they took the lane. The drivers.
Yes.
The drivers
if
would kill us if they proceeded.
Yeah. Yes, that would be an indication. It's any highway in the state, any roadway in the state that has a double yellow line, but it puts the responsibility on the driver to make sure it's safe. So you need adequate sight line. And if there's nobody coming, then you can cross over that to allow 3 feet to pass for the bicyclist. You're providing safety for the cyclist. And then when you pass, you have to get back over, obviously. And so, but it's laws like that and that aren't captured anywhere. There's a big splash from the state level, Bicycle Colorado. We all help to promote it. And then it just kind of fades a little bit, and it's the new law, but not as many people that are behind the wheel understand it.
Well, I think that one of my biggest feelings when I've had close collisions with cars out on the road, where somehow they feel like they have some kind of right to speed past and turn right in front of me, or when they're like cutting a lane or anything, or they just don't like that I'm on the road. My biggest frustration is that they don't understand I'm a person. They feel an entitlement to the road and to get to where they want to go as fast as they want to go. And they're just annoyed by me. But I'm just a mother and a business owner with 3 kids, 24 employees, trying to make a difference in the community and biking for joy, to give me a break, but also to get to where I want to go, and also to give tourists and other people in the community a love for this community by bicycle, because that's how I fell in love with it. But I'll get this guy in a big, giant, oversized truck that just speeds around me and is so irritated that he has to cross that double line and cussing at me as he passes, and then nearly, taking me out in his big truck to turn right in front of me, and I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm just a mom, like you almost took my life because you felt entitled to the road and you're so irritated. Like, I wish that there was a way to just be like, humanity, this is a human here.
Tori, you absolutely nailed it.
Road rage.
Yeah, you nailed it, Tori, when you made that comment. I wanted to point out that bike-friendly driver, truly their overarching premise, their message is to remind everyone that we're all humans, and no matter what modality we are choosing to get around in or using, we all deserve to get home safely at the end of the day. So you nailed it when you made that comment. So truly this training covers that. And it just says, hey, we're all human. We just want to get home safely.
So I'm pleading to the drivers that just want to know, what are the rights for cyclists? What should I know to be aware? Well, one, just no matter what, err on the side of caution when you're, bringing a weapon near, something that could be deadly, near a cyclist. But 2, get the training, know what the rules are, because wouldn't it be nice if they were sitting there and, not ignorant to the laws and just angry at all these cyclists going through, a stop sign because it's clear they got there first or whatever, but not mystified about, them clearing a thing, and they'd be a lot more content.
Absolutely. It's really just all about slowing down and being courteous to other people on the road.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the 3-foot law. We talked about the safety stop law. What are some other big, conflicts that you see out there?
Well, the one thing that I'd remind drivers of is when you see the bicycles on the roadway, consider that cyclists are supposed to be as far right as practicable, not as far right as possible. The issue with that is if the bicycles are as far over to the right as possible, there could be roadway debris, there could be ice, there could be edges that drop off, potholes. So
parked car maybe.
Yeah, parked cars. So they have to come out a little bit further. They might want to try to avoid opening doors, things like that. So considering that, they may be further away to the left than you would appreciate, but that's for their safety. And then you add the 3-foot rule, so you may have to go further out. But understand that that's for the safety of the cyclist who's going down the roadway. And one thing that I would like to say is, you look at a bicyclist on the roadway perhaps as an inconvenience to you. I like to tell people, well, another car on the road would be an inconvenience to you. Mm-hmm. So consider the fact that cyclist may be keeping a little bit of traffic off of your roadway, making other parts of that easier for yourself.
Right.
Yes. I think less cars on the road would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. I agree too.
In our city, that's just not going to happen anytime in the near future. We are still going to have continued amounts of vehicles on the road. And so what we're trying to do is create that environment where everybody can be safe. Everybody gets a chance to make it from point A to point B, regardless of the mode they choose. One of the terms that I like is vulnerable roadway user.
Good.
And that is basically anyone outside of a car. I drove down here today, so I'm in a 1.5 ton or multi-ton vehicle. I have ABS, I have airbags. I feel pretty safe when I'm driving my little Honda, if you will. But when I'm on a bicycle or if I'm walking, that's that extra level of exposure while you're out there. And so it's humanizing the people that we have, especially in our denser urban environments and where you would expect to see more people walking, neighborhoods, more people on bicycles. As we get more bicycle lanes that connect and make a broader network, we will see more cyclists out there. And I think that'll be helpful because if there's more bicyclists present, the automobile drivers will be able to become more familiar with them. Mm-hmm. We train the bicyclists to be predictable. There's a whole entire training track. I'm a league certified instructor. So we teach the bicyclists to be the best bicyclists while out on the roadways. And unfortunately, there's just not something beyond bicycle friendly driver right now to be able to train the motorists of how to be better motorists when there are vulnerable roadway users present. And I think it's unfortunate. It's part of our culture right now, and people are behind the wheel. I always say we've lost control. Loose nuts behind the wheel. But I mean, and you just as a driver, I drive far more than I bicycle, and I've just noticed the dynamic over the last few years changing. People are more frustrated. They're using their vehicles in a more aggressive sort of way, or they're distracted. By cell phones or whatever it else happens to be. So the roadways can be frighteningly dangerous, and navigating those can be challenging for bicyclists and even pedestrians, just crossing streets. So
I have a good friend who I actually just got out on his first e-bike ride recently, worked with me for 8.5 years at the lodge. And we were all going out on a group ride one day. And I said, hey, you want to come with us? And it was a good day for him to come and join us. He had light work. And so he came out and rode the e-bikes with us and he loved it. But he still asked me today as I was heading off to do this podcast, I said, what would you want to know? Because you've just newly become a bicyclist, what kind of questions should I ask for drivers? And he said, I just don't understand why, if our trail system is so great and there's a trail running right along the roadway, parallel with the roadway, why aren't they taking the trails and why are they on my road? So, he's a new convert. But I'm sure that he's not the only one thinking that. Why are the bicyclists on the road when there's a perfectly good trail running parallel to it?
Oh, there's a whole list of these. I'm looking at the clock. And so
Go for it.
Our urban trail system here, we have far more than 100 miles of urban trails, and most of them are connected. And I like to call it the circulatory system of human scale travel all throughout Colorado Springs. And our urban trails, it's one of my favorite places to ride because they're typically beautiful. They run along our creeks. You get to see beautiful things, and you don't have to necessarily interact with motorists, especially at large intersections and what have you, where it can be really challenging. So it's great that we have the urban trails, and you can go for miles, but the urban trail would not have taken me here today. I am close to an urban trail, but not all the way. So many times people can elect to use an urban trail, but to get to their final destination or to get to the urban trail from their home, because people should be able to ride from their home to wherever they need to go, they'll have to use city streets. And they may elect to use convenient bike lanes if they are there. They may elect to use quiet side streets, or they may elect to use a busier street that has a sidewalk. And then they're going to go up on the sidewalk. And then they have to then be mindful of pedestrians. Because the way my analogy is, when we're on the roadways as bicyclists, the cars are the danger to us. Well, then bicyclists, when they go on to paths, trails, urban trails, and sidewalks, many times they are the menace to the people that are vulnerable to them. So which would be the walkers and the runners and the kiddos and dogs and everything else. And so it goes both ways, I guess, when it comes to the safety. But being able to use your urban trail system to connect up for miles and not have to be on a road is a wonderful thing that we have here in Colorado Springs.
Absolutely. To add to that, Alan, I wanted to mention, too, we have a growing population that really is getting into the active transportation side of things. A lot of people want to replace a car trip, maybe walk an errand, what have you. And so we have more people taking active transportation, but where they want to go doesn't necessarily get them there on a trail or multi-use path. So that's another big reason, I think.
Well, but also, if you just choose to go down a road, I mean, I go down a road for leisure and I go for business because I have to get somewhere. Honestly, in our community right now, a lot of times we choose Pikes Peak over the Midland Trail just because of, some of the homeless issues on the trail. Just feels a little bit safer, especially if I'm by myself. I don't feel comfortable riding that trail by myself. So I even just have safety issues with the trail where I would choose a road with cars, over, that's just the sad, part of it these days. But I mean, essentially we just have a right to the roads.
Absolutely.
Bicyclists are legally able to ride on the city streets. And they are held to the same level of, how would you put this, Sid? Legality.
Like driving
same
laws.
Rights and responsibilities as automobile drivers when you're using your bicycle as a vehicle on the roadway.
Yeah, and bicycles in the state of Colorado are not considered vehicles. However, you are required to abide by all the laws, with the exception of laws that are specifically designed for bicycles. I do want to remind people, for especially those of you who are riding, you are allowed on the roadways, you're allowed on the paths. There are two locations where you cannot ride on the sidewalks, and that is downtown Colorado Springs. There are boundaries that you cannot ride on the sidewalks, so vehicles should expect the bicycles in the roadway, and in Old Colorado City. So in those specific locations, the cyclists must be in the roadway if they're riding.
And e-bikes. I mean, we haven't even gone into e-bike law and how e-bikes are changing our landscape. But, a lot of e-bikes aren't legal on trails. And so they have to take the road.
Yes, strictly speaking, yes. And that's another very long conversation. And we are grappling right now as a city and a region with e-bike access and rules and regulations and policies regarding that. But any way you look at it, the e-bikes have been flying off the shelves at our retailers. And they are allowing people to start using bicycles for many other reasons. So beyond just pure recreational, then they have a little bicycle that they can put bags on and what have you. It's got a set of fenders on it. It's got lights. And all of a sudden, they have a car replacement. Maybe it doesn't replace their car, but it gives them an option. So when they go out, if it's one of our typically beautiful days and they only have 2.5 miles to go, then they're going to take their e-bike because it's fun, it's beautiful, it's easier for parking. I mean, all the different reasons that you would choose to use those. And so I know on the urban trails, I have seen in the last 3 years a huge increase in people of all ages and abilities riding e-bikes. And so we're going to have more bikes that are out there, and the drivers are going to slowly get used to seeing more people as they choose, because if it's just recreation, sure, stick to the urban trails. And we have some people that do that. They go to a trailhead, they drive their bicycle there, and they go for their X amount of mile ride, what have you, and that meets their needs. But we have a lot of other people that want to start using the bicycle to go from their home to wherever that destination would be. And some days they might drive, some days they might ride a bicycle, and they need the network, the safe network, to get there. And our urban trails can get them miles and miles and miles, but typically you have to get off the urban trail and connect on city streets to your final destination.
Now, I've been leading bike rides in this community for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, I think, community bike rides. I think you've been leading them a lot longer than I have as one of my first teachers. There's a lot that cyclists do that don't help the situation with drivers. And there's a lot that cyclists can do to have more ownness on the situation and be good representatives and safe riders. I mean, Officer Santos, you even said, you might have the right to go through an intersection, but it may not be the smartest thing to do. You have to just judge that, like, what's going to keep me alive, what's going to keep me safe. Common sense has to.
Right. And I tell anybody that I know that rides a bicycle, and it's a reminder to them that when you're riding on the roadways, you are allowed to do certain things, and it's wonderful that you have that. But you always have to take into consideration your safety and the safety of others. Just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it, because especially if it's something that might be unpredictable to a driver, because even if you are in the right, if you get struck by a vehicle, you're going to lose that situation. Even if that person is legally liable for the accident or the incident, whatever that is, I want people to be as safe as possible. And I appreciate the trail system that we have, and I enjoy the fact that people can use that. But I also understand that there's some people that if they're going from point A to point B, there's no trail system between point A and point B. You're not going to ride miles out of the way just to go somewhere. So you're going to have the cyclists. I do push for all cyclists to obey the laws of the road so that you are as predictable as possible, and that drivers, especially drivers who aren't cyclists, aren't getting frustrated with cyclists in general. We don't all want to be pigeonholed into one thing. So discourage people from, your cyclists are allowed to ride two abreast on the roadway as long as they're not obstructing the traffic.
You can even take a lane in like a 3-lane road like Garden of the Gods. If you had a big group, you can all take that lane, and there's still the 2 lanes to your left, right?
Yeah, and so I will give you an experience that I had. I was going down a roadway. It actually wasn't inside the city of Colorado Springs, and there was a group of cyclists, a large group, I don't know, 30 plus, and they took it beyond the 2 abreast, and they were a lane and a half on a 2-lane highway, a 2-lane road. So I actually had to drift to the right, not to strike a cyclist who was in my lane of travel. So a group like that needs to take into consideration when they do something like that. They put an impression on drivers that, all cyclists are this way, and they're not. But cyclists need to understand that there's people who don't understand cycling and the way things are. So I think cyclists need to share that respect, and it needs to go both ways, and drivers need to understand that. So we can share the roadways in a safe manner.
Like on the, I know, Alan, it's like herding cats leading a bike ride sometimes,
Yes.
like you want to have this joyful experience, and it can create so much tension, also just with bicyclists being good bicyclists. You're going down a neighborhood road and they're riding, 2x2, and the cars can't get through. You should be riding single file on those roads. Let the cars go.
And that's what it is. And it's a negotiation when you're out there, and it's being considerate, and it's having an etiquette about both the way you ride your bicycle, but also the way you drive around bicyclists, and especially the vulnerable roadway users. It gets frustrating to me from a cyclist perspective, because there is no law that governs a large pack of cyclists. There's no law that says you can all group together and just be one big vehicle. Now, sometimes practically that's the best way to go, especially like in downtown, because you're taking the lane, and if it's narrow, even if you were single file, you'd be spread out for like a block and a half or so. And so there's these gray areas, if you will. And so I have come across the same thing with large packs of cyclists and what have you. And so you're always hoping that we can all just get along on the roadways. But when I'm behind the wheel, I also realize I've got ABS and airbags. I mean, I've got all this protection around me, and I just see those cyclists. And because I'm a bicyclist as well, I think I have empathy for them of the situation that they're in, being the vulnerable ones on the roadway. And sometimes I get frustrated, because not all bicyclists behave like they should. But on the flip side, how many times have you been driving along and those car drivers are not behaving like they're
not driving predictably?
Yeah, where there's 5 and 6 people that stream through the busy red lights and what have you. So it really goes down to personal behavior when you are either behind the wheel of your car or you're behind the bars of your bicycle, and it's that sharing of the roadway. And you'll see Officer Santos was talking about Sharrows, an older style of marking, but it was denoting where that shared space would be.
So what is a Sharrow for people that don't know?
It's a shared lane use marking called SLM, and it was actually developed in Denver. and then popularized, I think, in San Francisco, but I don't know, 25 years ago or so. And they were kind of all the rage. And they're the little marking that has the bicycle with the two chevrons right above it. And it's called a shared lane use marking. And that was a way for cities to show where the bicycles should be positioned in that lane. And they typically they were found where there was no bike lane. Usually it was in a gap, like there's a bike lane and then a half mile or so, and you didn't have a bike lane through a crowded area. They would put these down so that it would show the bicyclists or show the drivers where the bicyclist should be. And it also helped to guide the cyclists to be in a more visible portion of that lane, so that a car coming up from behind could see them, so they wouldn't do the I call it the little fish thing, but basically going around parked cars and then popping back out and going around parked cars. So it was one of those markings, and it was a step in the right direction. However, we have learned since that the shared lane use markings don't work as well as they should. And our city, to their credit right now, are starting to make strides, and this is Colorado Springs specifically, in adapting and retrofitting our roadways with far safer approaches. And so better bike lanes. We're looking out right now at the Cascade bike lane. And
I love the Cascade bike lane.
And of creating space, of creating that separation between the different forms of transportation, if you will, on a roadway. Because when I look out, I see a car and they're just going somewhere, and I see a bicycle, they're just going somewhere. So they're transporting themselves down the same roadway. And when you have the environment that the drivers have a little bit of space away from the bicyclists have a little bit of space away from the parked cars, and the bicyclists have space away from people using the sidewalk as a pedestrian, that's the best case scenario. And while we are making strides, we do have a 200 square mile city that much of it has been built in the last 20 to 30 years, and it didn't have some of this safer infrastructure put in. And so slowly but surely they're making it better, and they're creating those environments across a larger swath of our community, but it's going to take time. And so until we have a utopia, in a sense, where everybody had their own space, there's going to be shared scenarios, especially when it comes to drivers and bicyclists.
Well, on the onus for the cyclist, I would just say that, I would encourage any cyclist that's leading a group to take the Safe Ride Leader training. They offer ride leader training through the League of American Cyclists. There's classes that you can find here locally to learn how to lead a safe bike group. I did that before I started leading rides in the community, finding out how to safely pull a group off to a safe spot, in a parking lot or off the road, but not pull everybody, right into a roadway or a driveway where people are going to be turning, how to lead a safe ride, keeping people, giving them the tools to have proper hand signals to let them know to watch out for. We always yell car back. If car drivers don't know that, my groups are trained to yell car back when there's a car coming up behind us, so that, and we yell single file to tell everybody to get over. So we might have been riding two abreast, but once there's a car, we're all signaling to each other that there's a car coming back so that we can get over. What else, guys? What else is important to talk about?
Well, the last thing that I would like to have input in specifically is on the roadway, because you had talked about the road rage.
Yes.
And I know it occurs, but I put this to everyone, whether you're on a bicycle or you're in a car, whatever that is what is the value of the time lost in any particular situation? Somebody's in your way, whether it's a car or it's a bicycle. What have you lost by having them in front of you for a moment? I would say it's practically nothing or nothing. So is there really a reason to get upset? Is there a reason to drive too close to a bicyclist because you're upset because they're in the way? Is there a reason to cut off another car because they slowed you down half a second that particular day? So with everyone, just take the time to think about that, being safe, keeping yourself safe, the other drivers, the cyclists, and everyone else around, because it's that moment is not that important.
Right. And just hearkening back to Tori's earlier comment about, hey, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I have kids or what have you. it could be a child just trying to get to school safely on their own. It could be your grandfather, who decided to get an e-bike and they're trying it out and they're having a blast. They've rediscovered the joy of bicycling. It could be the person in Lycra, but, it could just be your mom or your father. So just slow down and be courteous. That's all we're asking for.
It doesn't really matter because they're a person.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I always like to say I'm extra social, like when I'm on my bike, say hi to everybody. And especially here in like the downtown core and the west side, as when I were leading rides, we would have people that would be overly nice. Like car drivers would stop in the middle of the street and allow the bicyclist to go through because they're like, hey, no, you, and they'd wave you through. As that's a whole other conversation. But when automobile drivers do take that moment and acknowledge the fact that, hey, you're on a bicycle, you're kind of exposed, I'll get you through the intersection kind of thing. I wave at them and I say thank you and acknowledge the fact that you're all sharing the roadway together and you appreciate it. And I think when we teach people how to be good ride leaders, I always tell people, you are a rolling representative for our cycling community every time you are out, whether that be by yourself, small group, or with a larger group of cyclists. And so act accordingly, when you're out on the roadways. And we have a lot of discussion right now around that e-bikes and the trails, and it all comes down to personal responsibility and behavior and etiquette. And that translates onto the roadways, to the sidewalks for all of our different users, especially the vulnerable ones, of just making sure that, and like how Sid says, make sure you're safe. You are the vulnerable one, so definitely make sure you're safe. But from a driver's perspective, just you have ABS and airbags and nobody else does. And so I feel as an automobile driver, I have an extra level of responsibility to keep the people that are vulnerable around me safe.
Yes, and there are some driver parking spots right along popular bike routes and bike lanes where, both bicyclist and driver need to make sure those car doors opening, that you're giving enough space for somebody that might be opening a car door. I've had a friend that's been taken out by a car door. She lost in every way in that deal. So we need the drivers and the cars to be responsible for that.
Part of the education information that's out there for drivers is it's called the Dutch Reach.
Yep.
And it's a way that you can open your door, which forces you to just be aware of what's going on right next to your car and right behind your car. Use the opposite hand. And so you're the driver, the door's on the left side for most vehicles. And so use your right hand to open your door, and it automatically turns you in the car. And so you're not relying on mirrors where there could be a bicyclist can be in a blind spot and real easy. And so it's things like that. But where in the world do people learn the Dutch Reach?
Right, exactly.
I love that. And then I'm also just begging cyclists that ride in a group. We encourage people to never say all clear when you are riding through an intersection. You do not want to tell the person riding behind you that it's all clear, because that situation could change very quickly. So don't do the all clear. You can say there's a car, car up, car right, car left. Let them know the cars are coming, but never give the all clear to another cyclist, because you're taking a lot of responsibility into your hands too. So watch out for each other. I mean, be nice. It's a beautiful community to live and work and ride. It's good for all of us to have cyclists out on the road, helping to encourage tourism, helping for people to be able to enjoy our great community. It helps with the economy. We're helping with the environment. If you have any more questions, where could somebody go? Is there somewhere that people could go? Actually, there was an app. Remember that app where you could, should we go to that place? Should we be reporting each other? Where should we go to report bad drivers or bad cyclists?
Oh, that's as far as bad drivers, because it's such it's just a fleeting thing. A car goes by, you had a moment, what have you. You can go the Go COS app, which is on the Bike Colorado Springs webpage. I think there's a link to that as well, and that's bikeColoradoSprings.org. And the Go COS app is a way that we can report as bicyclists, as pedestrians, what have you, problems in our own environment.
Right.
It's not as, I don't think, useful. Like, say, if you have a car that honked at you or something like that. I don't know if there's a code for that, and I don't know how that wouldn't be very helpful. But definitely from an infrastructure perspective, the city wants to know if the infrastructure is deficient and is unsafe. They definitely want to know. And then if you go to bikeColoradosprings.org, they have an entire education page, and Joan has been instrumental in this, in putting together an amazing amount of information for bicyclists' safety, but also the bicyclist-friendly driver link, and for, especially if you're a parent and you've got kiddos and they're getting their license and what have you, I would make them take that course. It will just help open their eyes and make them even more aware and be safe when they are in the scariest time of their life, 16 to 18 or so, when they first get their license. And then share that information at your office, with your friends groups. If you belong to clubs and things of this nature, just share that information widely, and just try to get the word out.
Absolutely. The other thing that bicyclists can do is actually report any aggressive drivers by calling the STAR CSP with the Colorado State Patrol.
Good point.
That is something you can do. I know it's frustrating, it's horrible. I mean, I've had it happen many times. It freaks you out, but try to get the plates, the make and model of the vehicle. If you can identify the driver, that's helpful, because that's required in court if you ever get called to court on something like that. But please report it using the STAR CSP number. It's star 277, and help us hold drivers accountable. It's really an opportunity as well for a state patrol officer to potentially call up the driver if they have repeat offenses. It's been called in more than once, to remind the driver, call them up and just remind them, hey, we have some laws in Colorado, so that we can share the road safely. That was somebody's life that you nearly took, in your hands. If anything, they could get that phone call from the patrol officer and just remind them, please give that 3-foot buffer of safety before passing, or yield if you have to. Just yield till they're safely through the intersection or on their way or what have you. Thank you.
Well, I love mountain biking. I love gravel riding. I know so many converts now from road cyclists who are choosing the hills and the mountains over roads because it's gotten so scary out there. You're a big mountain biker yourself, but I think that there is still such a utilitarian and such a joyful thing about road biking. I hope that we can make it a better community, because all the efforts in the community to make it more bikeable and everything don't mean anything if it's not safe, and that we're losing all of our cyclists to accidents and stuff. So be a better bike-friendly driver. I always say that every driver, is only one good ride away from being a cyclist. Let me take you on a ride on this community and we'll change your mind. But that's what I love to do, is to give people the joy of our community and cycling, one ride at a time, one pedal at a time. Anything else, guys? Officer Santos, thank you so much for being here today. Joan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
My friend Alan, thank you for always being Mr. Bicycle and advocating for cycling in the Springs. And thank you for listening to Pedal the Springs on Studio 809. And be sure to check out the show notes for links to things that we talked about in today's episode. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And be sure to check out the other fine podcasts at Studio809podcast.com, your local voices in the Pikes Peak region.